Good evening to one and all. My name is Saurabh and I'm your host for the PGC Weekly Podcast session today. Today we have got Mr. Amit Dasgupta as our guest speaker. Amit Dasgupta is a former Indian career diplomat and ambassador. Now I want to begin the discussion by asking you this initial question, Amit sir. What do we exactly mean by transformative thinking? And how do you feel about transformative thinking eventually making a significant impact on our lives?
The whole process of thinking, the whole process of acknowledging that we think before we act, the whole process of what action means, who does it impact, should it impact someone, why do we do what we do, is, to my mind, the core purpose behind transformative thinking. There's a general argument that the way we think, the way we behave, who we are actually, is not decided by you or me individually, is decided by society. And that's called the socialization process. And the reason we are taught to think and behave in a particular way is because it maintains social order. We become acceptable. When you ask the question that in a team that you're working on and you have a team leader, how can you have transformative leadership? Well, I think very important for us to, again, go back to the basics. And the basics really are, how are you thinking, do you think? In terms of why you're doing whatever you're doing. I mean, the team is trying to do something. The second question really is with regard to ethics. What are the values that you have in terms of finding a solution? And the third really is this the right thing to do? Mahatma Gandhi has a talisman. And talisman that I keep quoting all the time because it moves me when I think of what he said. And he said that if there is something you want to do in life, ask yourself whether your action will improve the conditions of the person who you know or you have seen, who's among the weakest, the most marginalized, the most susceptible in society. And if the answer is yes, it will help that person, go ahead and do it. But if the answer is no, it might not, then go back to the drawing board and redo what you're going to do. It's transforming lives that transformative thinking does. And that's what Professor Ian Jacobs said, didn't he? When he said that a great university stands on the twin pillars of not just great learning and great research, but it stands on the third pillar where both research and learning transform lives for the better. I think that's transformative thinking.
But now there is a very popular question from the public, which is on the ongoing situation, which we all know on the news channels. Being a diplomat yourself, I would also like to have your comments on the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict.
Is if you want to resolve the whole issue, there has to be fresh thinking. There has to be a new way of approaching the problem. I mean, there is a problem. You have to acknowledge that there is a problem. You need to also acknowledge the fact that all previous ways of dealing with it, which is, if you elect the Hamas, which many believe is a terrorist organization, if you elect the Hamas's negotiation with the Israelis is going to be through weapons. It's going to be armed. It's going to be military. And Israel, which has got far superior military strength, will respond militarily, and they will try to degrade Hamas's assets and in the process cost lives. And so, if 100 people die on one side and 10 people die on the other, that's only because where 10 people die, they probably enjoy military superiority.
From this session, Amit sir, the top 2 to 3 tips for me, and I'm sure for a lot of students who must be watching this session, one can be that be passionate towards your dreams. And also the way you beautifully portrayed the fact that acceptance of problem is important. There is a problem in hand, but we are not ready to accept it because probably we are too arrogant, or probably we are denying the fact that there is a problem before actually coming to the solution. And that for me was a key takeaway from this podcast. And with this, we essentially come to an end to our second PGC Weekly Podcast series. And we would like to thank Mr. Amit Dasgupta for taking his valuable time to come and join us for this podcast.